Hello, hello, and welcome to class. It is now in session. I hope you're ready to learn because today we're going to be taking a look at all of the different ship classes and figuring out why you might want to fly a frigate, a small ship, or why you might want to fly a vargar, a large ship, a battleship. Let's go ahead and hop into the game. We're going to go through each of the different size classes and we're going to go through a number of attributes with them, whether that's the speed, the damage, the size, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and hop into EVE Online and start talking about all this good stuff. So first and foremost, what is ship size? What are we actually talking about here? If we go ahead and jump into our ship tree, we're going to go ahead and use Mimitar for our examples here. We can see that the tree goes to the right and it goes up. The up is a level of like technicalness, of speciality. The T2, the T3, the Navy kind of ships. We're not going to be so much interested in that here today. A little bit, we'll touch on some stuff there. But what we are interested in is going to the right of the screen. So we got frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and then capitals. Capitals are a little bit weird up here. We're not going to be touching on them too much, but we will definitely touch on them a little bit because they're kind of different than subcapitals. The game is split into subcaps and capitals, and we're going to be focusing mostly on subcapitals here today. So let's go ahead and first talk about kind of just general things. Frigates, small ships, are going to be fast. They're not going to do a whole lot of damage. They're generally going to be close range. They're going to be more for unlocking potential. They're going to be, if you need speed, if you need to be in a particular place at a particular time, a lot of these smaller ships are going to do the job for you. They are also, and this is true for all of the ship class ranges, the smaller ship you are, the easier it is to fully train into. So you can be an incredibly good, skilled frigate pilot and quite possibly be doing more than if you were trying to like be a cruiser pilot that doesn't have a lot of skills, or even worse, like a battleship pilot. If you're new to the game, a lot of people will try and maybe push you into the battleship direction, but it's going to take so long to train those skills that you're going to be basically able to sit in the battleship, whereas you're going to be able to effectively fly a smaller ship like a destroyer, or a cruiser, those would be my choices for like standard DPS, which we'll talk about, like why not a frigate for, that kind of stuff. Why do I think you should go a little bit higher into the destroyer cruiser area? We'll talk about that in the future, or it will become clear in the future why we think that, hopefully. So let's first go ahead and talk about the ranges. Yeah, let's start with ranges. No, let's start with damages. Everyone loves some damage. Why would I not choose a higher damage ship? Why would I choose a lower damage ship? And it kind of comes down to application versus big raw numbers. For our frigates, and let's go ahead and have some examples here. Let's see what kind of fits I have for a let's try and stick to the navies and T1s. So let's do a Kestrel, a good old Kestrel. Actually, we were going to stick with Mimitar. Actually, let's switch it up. Let's talk about Caldari. I think missiles and Caldari are going to be a little bit easier to talk about, so let's do that. So we got a Kestrel here, a T1 frigate for Caldari, and we can see that we are putting out just under 100 DPS, and we're not going to, okay, let's talk about like all of the different weapon aspects together, because I think it is important to consider all of them together. That's going to be your damage, your range, and your... Okay, we are going to switch to a turret because that's going to be easier to talk about tracking and application than if we were going to be talking about missiles. So let's switch it back to Mimitar, because Mimitar is the best. They're not actually, for a lot of reasons. But I think for our examples, Mimitar is going to be the best option to choose. So let's see. We got some Rifter. Let's look at this Rifter fit. And for our damage, I kind of want to always use T2 guns. So okay. We're always going to be using EMP. Yeah, let's just do base Republic Fleet EMP. Sure, why not? We're not talking about ammo here, so we're always just going to use like a standard. Actually, yeah, EMP is a very standard ammo. So, and Republic Fleet specifically is always going to be, yeah, it's a very standard ammo. Don't worry about this part. So, for these autocannons, for this Rifter, we're now pulling 150 DPS. Let's just round up. There's going to be a lot of rounding here. And the range, do I want to talk about projectiles? Yeah, we're only going to be looking at the fall off range. I think that is a fair. We should probably talk about Amar. But I'm not skilled into them. No, okay, never mind. Yeah, we're just gonna stick. Eve is a complex game. There's a lot of different variables that affect a lot of different things. So it is a little bit difficult to try and get like a baseline of how all these things are different than each other. And we're kind of winging it. We're shooting from the hip here. But stick with me. You'll learn a thing or two. We're just going to talk about the fall off range because we're going to stick with projectiles. We're going to stick with EMP. So all of these should be relatively relative. They match well together. So we're going to be doing 150 DPS. Our fall off range is 10,000 meters. And these are autocannons. So these are going to be the short range weapon systems. We'll talk about the different long ranges later. So 10,000 meters, 150 DPS, and 10,000 meters is important. This is one of the reasons you might want to use a small ship, is because things like a web and scram, if these are not compact, they're slightly under 10K. So they're like 9.5 if you just have a T2 or 9. And then this is 11. I forget exactly my ranges. Okay. But this is 9,000 meters. This is 10,000 meters. And these are going to be like frigate ranges. So if you want to use modules like tackling modules, webs, scrams, you're going to want to get in close. And if you are in close, you generally want to get there quickly. You want to be able to be on the scene and tackle people so that they cannot warp off. This is one of the major benefits of flying a frigate. They don't have a lot of DPS. They are very short range, but they are very agile. They are hard to hit for larger ships, and it is incredibly possible for you and your hero tackle, is what it's called sometimes, to get up close to an enemy like battleship, start orbiting it. It won't be able to hit you, and you can tackle it so it can't leave, and then you can have your friends come with their larger damages and come and blow it up together. It's all teamwork. So this is what like frigates are going to be, the special little like little dagger guys, right? They have a very special utility slot in their close range and their speed and their ability to not be shot at well. So moving on up to a destroyer. What does a destroyer do that a frigate does not? Well, a lot of damage. The main thing with a destroyer is that you just load up a bunch of guns onto it. So now we're going to be talking about the Trasher. Except I actually have to spell it not like Trasher. Here, let's load some Republic Fleet EMP. Destroyers are okay, so destroyers and battle cruisers, which we'll talk about a little bit later, battle cruisers, are what I like to consider halfway steps. They are most like the class before them. So a frigate. They are most like a frigate, but they have more damage. They just have more guns attached to them for their T1 versions. The T2 versions are generally like more specialized, especially for the destroyers, because you have the interdictor, which is a very special ship, the command destroyer, which again is a very special link ship, and then the T3D, which is really good. The T3D is like just a lot more damage, right? And they are a little bit heavier, a little bit slower, a little bit weightier than your frigates. But for the most parts, these are still small ships that focuses on doing a lot of damage. And I kind of like to consider them to be anti the class below them. So destroyers are going to be very good at killing frigates, and battle cruisers are going to be very good at killing cruisers. However, they are going to still struggle at like one class above. So a destroyer is going to struggle to take on a cruiser because a cruiser is still going to be applied to them well, and do more damage than they can do because they are going to be using larger guns. But a destroyer is going to still be very good against a battle cruiser or a battleship because they are still very small. They're definitely not as large as a cruiser. So throughout all of this, it's going to kind of it's going to be all about like picking what size you want to be able to fulfill the role that you need to fulfill without easily being hit, or maybe if you are large and easy to hit, maybe you have a lot of tank, a lot of resistances, but you're going to be paying in that you're going to be slower to react to basically anything. So again, destroyers is doing like double the damage because they have double the guns, and their ranges are going to be basically the same. So these ranges looks like it is 7,000 because this ship doesn't have a range bonus, whereas the Rifter does have a fall off bonus. So slightly just because of the ship choices, slower range. And then we have just the scram. There isn't a web here, but this definitely could use a web. So hopefully that explains the weapon systems a little bit of the destroyer. Moving on up to the cruiser, the good old, I like to consider cruiser the standard in this game. Like it's kind of middle of the class. It's medium size. It just kind of is in the middle of everything. And I think everything relates to the cruiser. So let's go ahead and talk about the stabber. Let's see if we have any stabber fits. We should, right? Kind of basic stabber, just what we're looking for. Actually, let's do the Mr. Unlucky stabber. That's probably better. So again, we're going to reload the Republic fleet. It has slightly more damage than a destroyer, even though it has only 4 guns. And the reason for this is because we have now moved up into medium-sized guns. Oh, actually, we needed to look at the Trasher again. So we're also going to be looking at the tracking. So here you can see our turret tracking is 590. That's a very large number. So basically, tracking is a whole fucking deal, which we need a whole class on just for tracking. So we're not going to worry about it too much here. But suffice it to say, the larger the number, the more easy it is to hit smaller ships. And I have a very basic reduction to this formula, which if I go to my bio, you can see, even though we're not going to really talk about it a lot here. But basically, the way I consider how much tracking you need is going to be the hull factor divided by the turret total range. And the hull factor for a frigate is 1,600. So let's just do a very quick maths here. Is that our total range is going to be 7,000. except for it's going to be 1,600 divided by 7,000. Oh, wait, wrong way. 7,000 divided by 1,600. That doesn't seem... What am I... Oh, divided by 7. Okay. 1,600 divided by 7. So I consider that I need 230 tracking to be able to successfully track a frigate at 7,000 meters. And obviously, this has more than that, which means we're going to be still good at tracking it once we're closer and still going really fast. So basically, wherever we're at, we'll be able to track a frigate with a destroyer. So now, if we move up to the stabber, we can start talking about tracking a little bit more and what it might be able to hit or not hit. So here, our turret tracking is only 50. So if you recall, except for we do actually have longer ranges as well. So now our ship can shoot out double the range, basically, up to 20 kilometers. It has slightly more DPS. However, it has much shittier tracking. 10 times less tracking, in fact. However, if we do a little bit of math here, we're going to do 1,600 divided by 20, because now our range is 20. And now I'm saying that I need about 80 tracking to successfully, easily track a frigate. Which means that the cruiser... Oh, I am getting a call that I need to take. All right, we back. Sorry about that. No, Mom, I'm streaming.
Secret word.
More like,
which was ping has been spoken by Dougie Duke.
Which was what? Oh, ping. Congratulations, Dougie Duke. You won the secret word giveaway. Go ahead, type !, claim, space, whatever partner skin you would like. Yeah, no, just doctor stuff. All right, back to the video. The stabber is going to have a harder time hitting frigates, but it will be totally fine hitting cruisers. It also shoots further away. It does more damage, and that's great. Let's go ahead and move on to battle cruisers for their damage types. So battle cruisers are a little bit interesting in that there is actually a very special ship, one of a kind in the game. Every empire has one of these.
Dougie Duke has claimed the scimitar skin.
And it is a ship that is a size like a medium size because they're battle cruisers, but they shoot larger turrets. But before we look at that, let's actually just look at the regular one. So now we're going to be looking at a Hurricane. Let's grab the Public Fleet EMP. So again, just like the destroyers, the battle cruisers are kind of like a halfway ship up. They're really good at killing the size below them. But they have more difficulty going up against a higher ship because they are a little bit larger and they don't have the larger turrets. So if you want to shoot down, then you want to be trying to like fly a destroyer or a command ship. If you want to shoot equal, then you can choose any ship. If you want to shoot up, like, so this is kind of where we're going to be talking about T2 ships. Like, you're probably asking yourself, why would I not just always fly a destroyer or a battle cruiser? And honestly, the answer, so for frigates, it's because if you want to go really fast and you want to have those specialized roles, you want to be able to tackle things, and frigates are going to be a little bit better than destroyers at doing that. So that's why you would want to go with like a frigate. And then for the battle cruisers are really good, especially in like the meta currently. They're just really strong. So a lot of times you would just want to go battle cruisers, but you could also opt to go with like a specialized, like a T2, like heavy assault cruiser, or a T3C. T3Cs are going to be very expensive, but they are also going to be better than like a T1 battle cruiser for sure. A heavy assault cruiser is about equivalent to a battle cruiser, especially like a Navy battle cruiser. And then the destroyer and the battle cruisers have special T2 ships. They don't really get a whole lot more damage on their T2 ships. They get special utility things. So this command ship is like the command destroyer in that both of them provide links, which are basically AoE buffs to the team. So you don't really get up the T2 for more damage, and we're kind of focusing here on like the standard damage ships, which we can just go talk about really quick, including the T2. It's going to be like your frigate and your assault frigate, your destroyer, your T3C, tactical destroyer, your cruiser, your heavy assault cruiser, your T3C, which is your strategic cruiser, and then your battle cruiser. And then we'll talk about battle ships and marauders. These are just pure damage. And then we'll touch on the dreadnought, and the lancer is a little special thing. We'll touch. So back to the battle cruiser. We're talking about the Hurricane Go Burr. We are up to 700 DPS now. And if I remember correctly, the cruiser had 600 DPS. Let me just double check this again. Actually, 600 seems high if I'm thinking. 400. Okay. So we go from 400 to 700 because we basically get double the guns. And then the guns are still medium class, so they still shoot exactly the same range. They're still going 20 kilometers. And they still have the same tracking. So kind of the question is like, why would you ever fly a smaller ship? And we'll talk about that. It'll become a little bit more clear when we talk about like speed, targeting time, things like that. Sizes. They are going to be in between, so they are going to be slightly larger than cruisers. They're going to be easier to hit than cruisers. Things like that. Whereas like a cruiser can kind of more effectively speed or mitigate to like sig tank a battleship. A battle cruiser is basically going to really eat a battleship's damage. So they're really good at shooting down, but they have more difficulty shooting up. Sort of. Depends on like, yeah, I don't know. EVE is complex. There's a lot of caveats. So now we're going to talk about the special battlecruiser ship, which for Mimitar is going to be the Tornado. If we look here, we can see that the game considers this a medium ship, primarily fitted with medium modules. However, its bonuses are for large turrets. So if we go ahead and simulate a Tornado, let's see what kind of fits we have. Okay. These are probably all going to be arties, huh? Yes, these are all arties, which is not going to work for our situation of what we're talking about. So let me, even though you're never going to fit a ship like this, you're always going to fit a Tornado with arties pretty much. Let's pretend that you fit it with autocannons. Because these things are really fragile. They are basically the glass cannons of the ships. So they want to be far away. They just want to touch with damage, but they never want to get like into a brawl. They never want to get hit. They trade all of their survivability for damage. That's what allows them to fit those larger weapons. But now we go up another 200 DPS. So we're almost at 900 DPS here, which if we remember, our little frigate was doing 150. So we are like at 6 times the amount of damage. And then we get a bonus. Okay. So we get a pretty large. Oh wait, we're also using large turrets. So we do get a fall off bonus, but a lot of the other ships we had have fall off bonuses as well. So we are now up to the large ranges, which is going to be 50 kilometers. So we went from 10 to 20 to 50. And we are doing more DPS, more range, but we have reduced our tracking by, again, almost 10 times. So we are now at 7 instead of 50. So let's quickly see if we could shoot a frigate. So at 1600 divided by 50, because our 50 kilometers, we would need 32 tracking, and this is just very generic estimates, but I have done a large amount of math to get these numbers. But it does require a lot of generalizations, we'll call it. So we would like to have a 32 tracking to be able to track a frigate, which means we have 7. No shot. We're not going to be tracking a frigate. The only way that we are ever going to successfully shoot a frigate is if they directly approach us, because then tracking doesn't matter, because they have no traversal. We just shoot straight in front of us and they blow up, which is why if you were a newer player, you might be like, why did a battle cruiser just obliterate me? Why did a battleship just obliterate me? And it's because you hit the approach button. Don't hit the approach button. You always want to double click in space, and you want to spiral in. You want to always be having some traversal against these larger ships, because that means that they won't be able to hit you. You want to have some amount of like horizontal or perpendicular velocity, transversal velocity even. Okay, so 900 DPS, 40 kilometers or 45 kilometers, and shitty tracking. So now let's move up to a battleship. Let's talk about the Mastodon. Or wait, what is this ship called? Maelstrom. Okay. These are autocannons. Perfect. Republic fleet. Now, with a battleship, we are doing even more damage, because these ships are designed for doing large turrets, large armor. These guys are really slow. They're just basically sitting in the water. But right now we're just talking about the turrets. So this guy is doing 1100 DPS. It can shoot out to 30 kilometers because it doesn't have any range bonuses. And its turret tracking is 5. So less than the tornado. But it is very similar to a tornado because it is just using large turrets. However, the reasons why you might want to use this over a tornado, we'll talk about a little bit later, but the long short answer of it is that it has a lot more tank. And then let's talk about a nag. Do I have a nag fit? I do. We'll also talk about Vargur. Okay, before we talk about nag, let's talk about Vargur. The Vargur is a specialized T2 ship. It comes after... No, Vargur doesn't matter. Even though Vargur, always straight to Vargur. I will very quickly put in some Republic Fleet EMP here. Just so you guys can see, some might say the stupidity. So a Vargur is doing like 2,000 DPS. It can shoot 50 kilometers. Turret tracking, 7.4. It can shoot further than the tornado, has just as good tracking as the tornado, does over twice the damage of the tornado. But it is a lot more expensive. But there's a reason everyone goes to Marauders, because it is basically the king of subcaps. It is the largest subcap that you can do. This is the most damage you can do as a subcapital ship that can still like move around semi-freely. But it's never going to have a shot in hell at shooting a frigate. It's probably not going to shoot a destroyer. It can start to shoot cruisers. Let's do a very rough. Let's do the calculation for a cruiser. So that's 385 divided by 50 is 7.7. So as long as we are shooting at our fall off, and then we could shoot a cruiser. So if we're shooting something 50 kilometers out, we could start to shoot a cruiser. And then we could almost definitely shoot a battle cruiser, and then we could definitely shoot a battleship. But if we are like closer than the 50 kilometers, so let's say like the cruiser, generally cruisers are going to be shooting at like 15 kilometers ish. So if we have our hull factor divided by like 15, where we're actually shooting our cruisers, we would need 25 tracking. So if a cruiser can get in close to the Vargur, the Vargur's not going to be able to shoot it very well. And then if you get too close, then it might web you, and then, then you're really slow, and then you're a lot easier to hit. But Vargur's kind of dumb. And moving on to lastly but not leastly, let's touch on the Nag. The Nag is a capital ship, not a subcap. So the gameplay is like pretty different. But let's load some Republic Fleet EMP. Are these a close range? Yes, these are the close range. We need apparently some gyros. And, oh, okay. Right. If we load this into Pyfa, because I do not have these skills, we're going to quickly load this into Pyfa. Pyfa is a third-party fitting program, which basically lets you simulate fits, and it lets you simulate them at different skill levels. So if we could successfully fly this, we would be doing 3,500 DPS. That's a lot of damage. Our range is about 60 kilometers. And our tracking is 3.5. So you're doing like even more. Basically, you're just doing even more. You are just a very large ship. You're doing a whole lot of damage. You're very hard to move around though. And so like the trade-off between like a Vargar and this is that Vargars can actually move, whereas these guys, like once you put them somewhere, like they're pretty much staying exactly where they are.
Hey, you there. Thank you for the follow.
Okay, so hopefully that explains weapon systems between their tracking, their ranges, and their damage. Let's go ahead and move on to the speed of ships. So for the speed, we're going to go ahead and bring up Eve Uni. Because I believe they have a very nice chart. I thought they had a very nice chart. That's warp. I'll find it here shortly. Okay, here we go. There's a better chart here. Hopefully we can find it. But here's a quick T1 class comparison for speed. And signature rate is what we'll talk about. And keep in mind, so for a shuttle, we're not talking about shuttles because they have no combat capabilities. A frigate is going to be doing 300 to 400, and this is the base speed. Let's go with the top speed, because if we're worried about speed, top speed is what matters the most. So let's say a frigate goes 400, and for reference, an afterburner is going to roughly double your speed, and a micro warp drive is going to roughly 6 times your speed, like 5 to 6. So if you are doing 400, or if you really want to go fast, it's going to be 4, 8, 240. You're going to be going about 2,400 in a T1 frigate. Is that correct? Let me bring up a rifter. No. Okay, because you go 456, and then this goes 32. Yeah, you know, remember when I said roughly? Okay, so the thing is with micro warp drives and afterburners is that the base weight, the base volume, the base mass of a ship comes into play. Say Vargar has the best mix between damage application and tank compared to other Marauders. Paladin has more tank. Okay, you guys are just talking about Marauders. So how many times is that? 3,200 divided by 430. 7.5. Yeah, we're for sake of argument, we're just gonna go with my estimate. I don't think it will change anything. But smaller, lighter ships get more of a bonus to a micro warp drive than heavier ships. And because we are looking at the Mimitar stuff, then yeah, it's going to get even more. Again, yes. Again, I stated it before. I'll state it again. Everything in Eve has an asterisk next to it. In order for you to know everything about like all the different ship classes, like, oh my god, this is going to be a year project. There's so many caveats. But okay, frigate, let's call it 400. And then I want to make a quick little Excel sheet. Sorry for the flashbang. Okay, let's do 400, 365, 240, 180, 130. And then equals this times 2. And equals this times 6. Make all of this much larger. Bold it. Format this correctly. I should be able to copy formatting. There we go. Okay. So here we see we're curious about, let's go from the bottom to the top. So if a battleship, rather, how do I want to talk about speed? A frigate, rather, okay. A battleship, a micro warp drive battleship can catch up to an afterburnered frigate. A micro warp drive battle cruiser can catch up to anything. Okay, another way to look at this is that a micro warp drive can catch up to anything afterburnered. No dark mode, because like Google Sheets is like terrible at dark mode. They just like don't have it. It's like you could use an add-on, but then like the only add-on that works is like that makes everything dark mode. It's really dumb. So frigates is going to be going 3 times the speed of a battleship. So if you want to go fast, if you want to speed tank things, going fast is good. So, and also like activities, if you're doing an activity, let's talk about PvE for a little bit. If you're doing an activity that you need to go somewhere quickly, then a smaller frigate or destroyer is going to be your friend. However, most PvE activities don't actually require you to go somewhere quickly. They prefer larger firepower. So like if you're doing missions, you want to basically have the largest ship possible that can still apply to the smaller ships, which is why cruisers, which is why the Jila, the Isktar are incredibly potent ships. Because yes, Ishtar's you could be flying a Brutix, or you could be flying a Rattlesnake in your havens. A lot of people fly these cruisers because they actually end up being faster and better and cheaper because of the application. Because it doesn't, the speed helps in being able to tank the enemies with those cruisers. Because generally they're running like 100 mn afterburner stuff, which is a whole another little tech that we're not going to worry about. But basically it allows you to get micro warp drive speeds with an afterburner, which really helps your signature radius, which makes it harder for them to hit you. And then the damage that you are doing is applying well into the enemies that you are shooting in these havens and whatnots. So it's not always about going straight to Vargar. Sometimes it is, though. Sometimes if you're doing C5 wormhole sites and you need to be able to tank a lot of damage, but you don't really need to be able to move anywhere, but you need to also do a lot of damage to battleships. There's a lot of battleships in C5 wormholes. Then you're going to be looking for these bigger, badder ships. You could even do dreadnoughts for C5 wormhole sites. And what pays more? Yes, the C5 wormhole sites do pay more than the Ishtar ratting. But there are also smaller activities that do pay incredibly well, like T6 triple boxing frigates is going to be paying some of the best ISK in the game. It's like over 1 billion ISK an hour. Like, it doesn't really matter what size ship you are. All of those different classes can do something very effectively and can make a lot of money doing it. If you're in a cruiser, you could go rob some ESSs. You could do some angel incursions. And also, always keep in your mind, this is incredibly important to keep in your mind, is that smaller ships take much, much less training time to effectively use. If you can effectively use a jita, then you're going to be making a lot more money just doing ratting havens in your nullsec area than if you can shittily pilot a Vargar in doing C5 sites, because then you actually run a risk of just actually exploding and losing more money. Because yes, the activity makes more money. C5 wormhole ratting makes a lot of money, but it also takes a lot of money and risk involved. There's a lot of PvP there. Whereas, like, if you lose an Ishtar, who the fuck cares? It's an Ishtar. Go get another one. Like, they're not that expensive. They make their money back a lot quicker. And when you die, you lose less. Exactly correct. So now that we've talked about speed a little bit, if you need to go somewhere, if you're tackling someone, this is why you might want to use a frigate over a destroyer, because you get that extra 200 meters per second, which can be very helpful for getting just that tackle off, just that last second tackle off. Every second matters. And also frigates warp generally faster than a destroyer as well. So you can get to the enemy quicker, you can tackle them quicker, you're in your ranges of where you're using your warp scram and your web, things like that. And then you can wait for your slower ships with more damage to come in. And also, as a frigate, once you have webbed them, it doesn't matter that they're a cruiser or a destroyer at that point. They're webbed, they're slower, they're easier to hit. Then the battleships are actually starting to track. It's all teamwork. Every ship size matters and is very important. Okay. Now, let's talk about size. Actually, let's talk about. Oh wait. We will briefly touch on signature radius. The only thing that you need to know about signature radiuses is that smaller ships have a smaller signature radius. Larger ships have a large signature radius. What signature radius does is a number of things, but most importantly, it affects your application. If you have a small sig radius, you are harder to hit because you are a smaller target. It also takes longer for them to target you. So if you're a frigate, you can start to approach very quickly. Sorry, I got distracted there. So smaller signature radius makes it harder for them to target you. So basically, if you're a frigate, you can approach them. You can get in ranges before they can even like do anything, shoot at that long range where they might have better tracking against you. Whereas if you're in a battleship, you're basically instantly targeted. So if you were trying to, so let's go back to the occasion where like a scorpion, not a scorpion, a rattlesnake ratting a haven versus a Gila ratting a haven. The reason a lot of people don't do this is because they are slower, slower to align, and an enemy might filament into your system, scan you down, and warp to you before you have enough time to align and get out of there. And also, because you are a larger target, you are easier to target, targeting speed. So they land right directly on you. They target you within just like a few seconds, as opposed to like double that with a cruiser or whatever. And then they get you, right? They get you. So you don't want to have a large signature radius. Larger ships are easier to get caught. And then you lose even more ISK. So it's all a risk versus reward kind of game. Next, let's talk about EHP. So how beefy are these ships? What is the difference in beefiness between a frigate and a battleship? And I will tell you, it's a whole lot. But again, because we've talked a lot about the mitigation, frigates mitigate so much damage. They are like impossible to hit, basically. That is their strong suit. They have that you can get them with really high traversal. So that is how they survive. A frigate, don't get me wrong, a frigate can survive much easier than a battleship when piloted well, when piloted correctly. Frigates are, in my opinion, very hard to pilot well. So if you are a new player, you kind of have to strike a balance between training time and difficulty to pilot, which is why the cruiser kind of reigns supreme. There's so many good options for cruisers. It's just a nice little middling ground. It doesn't take so long to train, but it can do a lot. It has some mitigation with its movement. It has some effective EHP. It's just got, it's really well-rounded. Cruisers are really good. And I suggest you focus in on them to be able to do a lot of varieties of activities. And then you can kind of focus a little bit less on like destroyer frigates and then battle cruisers. Well, also focus on battle cruisers because they can be really good too. Thank you so much for the raid, May. So let's talk about EHP. The Rifter is going to be having little under 3k EHP.
Hey, you there.
And what EHP is, if you don't know what EHP is, it is effective hit points. So you basically take all of these hit points, these 500, 1000, 1500, and then you apply these resistances, and that is what you get your effective HP. So if something is shooting at you with universal damage type, which is going to be like drifters, for example, we're in a drifter event, so they're shooting universal damage, you are going to effectively have a little under 3000 EHP. Let's go ahead and talk about the Trasher. Thrasher moves up with double the EHP. And let's talk about Sig Radius as well, because Sig Radius is going to be like how hard you are to hit, as well as speed. So yeah, let's talk about EHP, speed, and Sig Radius kind of together. We're going to turn off our micro warp drive for these tests. Because basically the idea with the micro warp drive is because it blooms your signature, it makes you much easier to hit. You only want to have it on when you are repositioning. An afterburner is going to not bloom your signature, and it is going to help you signature tank, whereas a micro warp drive is only for repositioning because it's going to make you a lot easier to hit. So here we have 69 sig radius. We have 330 meters per second. And we have 6,000 EHP. So let's go back to the Rifter. Actually, let's go ahead and let's do the compare tool for these. We don't need actual fits. Okay. And then with the compare tool, little pro tip is go up to this top right little hamburger and make sure you click only show attributes that differ. And that makes this list over here much shorter. A lot of these attributes do differ between all these ships, so it's actually not that much shorter, but it is slightly shorter. So let's do velocity, warp speed too, because that's pretty important. Oh, we also didn't talk about targeting range between the different classes. Let's talk about that real quick. And scan resolution. It just basically means that smaller ships scan things faster. Sig radius. All of these are going to have the same resistances because they're all T1s. So we can just look at armor, shield, and whole hit points. Okay. So here we can see structure, armor, shield. I think it's going to be... all these are going to be pretty similar, like ratio-wise. Mimitar is a little bit of a weird faction in that they can like focus in on sometimes shield or armor. But let's focus in on shield. Yeah, let's just do shield. So here we got 400, then 800, then 1600. So it almost doubles between the frigate and the destroyer, which is kind of like a half step up. And then it almost doubles again between the stabber and the destroyer. And then it pretty much stays the same with the tornado because, again, remember, they traded all of their defensive capabilities for just more damage. But they are still a like slightly higher ship. They are a battle cruiser, not a cruiser. So all of their additions go into damage, not tank. Whereas with the Hurricane, again, the shield HP goes up over double this time, like 3 times. And then between the Hurricane and the Maelstrom, it doubles again. And then the Naglfar, the cap. This is the difference between a capital and a subcapital ship. It goes up, not double, but 10x. How do you 10x your shield capacity? Just go from subcap to capital. But also, how do you 10x 20? How do you 20x your signature radius? You go from subcap to capital. These things are big and easy to hit. They're basically giant structures in space. As for the Shig radius, again, we would kind of expect like a sort of like a doubling. So 30 to almost, or 35 to almost not quite 60, because like it's like a half step a little bit. And then like this doubles again, and then this doubles. And then the difference between a cruiser and a battle cruiser in terms of like size is actually much different than a frigate to a destroyer. Even I'm learning some new stuff. So like this goes up 2.5 times, not quite 3 times as much as the shield capacity, but it is much larger. And then between the Hurricane and the Maelstrom, it goes up double. And then obviously this changes a lot. Scan resolution. This kind of just goes down a little bit linearly, maybe. So this is 100, this is 200, this is 100, this is nothing. Oh, because these are both battle cruisers. The tornado being in here is like throwing things off a little bit. It's a little weird. This is 100, this is 100. So the Thrasher is a little bit different here in that it like really drops. Because the Thrasher needs to be able to target frigates really well, so it keeps a high scan resolution. And again, these are all generalizations. We are looking at only a very few selection of ships, Mimitar only, like the basic damage kind of Mimitar ships. So take all this with a grain of salt. Things will be different. Things will not be so linear. There's a lot of different ships in Eve. There will be minimums, there will be maximums. The targeting range is going to be 20 to 27 to 40 to 50. So like basically stays the same because again, these are going to be kind of locked to like the weapon types because that's the ranges that they need to be able to shoot out at. So this is going to be a little less than 30. This is going to go up to 50. These are going to be a little higher at 60. Like the tornado being at 60, it means you're probably going to have to like, because it likes to be arty, you're probably going to have to fit targeting systems to it. But we're not going to be talking about fitting here. Eve is complex. And then Maelstrom goes up to 90.
Liquid gank has been spoken by Dougie Duke.
Dougie, congratulations for saying the secret word. Go ahead, type ! claim space, whatever partner skin that you would like. And we already talked about the velocity, and we can talk about ship warp speed as well. Again, this kind of relates back to if you're traveling a lot, if you're going from like haven to haven, or if you are PvPing, if you're trying to like PvP in a battle cruiser, you're going to be going only 3 versus like a Rifter, which is going to go 5. So like almost half the speed.
Hey bitch.
And when you're doing a lot of warping,
to watch an ad right
it definitely
now. So pause
adds
your
up.
fucking game.
Ad time, cool. Do I have anything else to say, or am I just gonna keep rambling about ship classes?
Dougie Duke has claimed the Cyclone Fleet skin.
I think we have pretty much covered everything that I want to cover. Oh, I know it's a lot. I know there was a lot of rambling. I did my best. The differences between the ship classes is very complex. But again, I will reiterate that training time is very important. You only have an amount of skill points that you can train in a certain amount of time. So, and unless you've trained all of the skill points, then it means you should probably focus on training a smaller ship well compared to a larger ship poorly. You're going to generally get better results there. A cruiser is a very good middle ground. You can do a lot of things with a cruiser. It's going to be able to hit into, depending on how you fit it, you can shoot down with it or you could shoot up with it. It depends. We didn't talk at all about the different empires or the different turrets or the different weapon systems, but there's differences there too with like ranges and damages. And then, yeah. Destroyers and battle cruisers are like half pushes because like you can train, like if you ask me, I would recommend you probably train cruiser battle cruiser. And maybe only like level 4 battle cruiser because that's going to be easy enough. And then a lot of your skills that you learned for cruisers, like medium turrets, are going to be very useful for the battle cruisers because they don't go up in sizes. And training weapon systems definitely takes a long time. Adin says you can go straight into cruiser and be a really good pilot without even touching a battleship or higher. T3 cruisers are great to train into. I do agree with your statement until you said T3 cruisers are great to train into. T3 cruisers specifically are much better with much higher SP into them, into like all of your skills. Like for a long while, you're going to be doing more damage, more everything, just more better in a heavy assault cruiser than a T3C, and it is going to be much, much, much cheaper. You say, yeah, people who start the game and jump right away into big ships end up being terrible at the game. Yes, because you're going to be not good at flying your ship, and it's going to be expensive, and you're going to lose it, and you're going to burn out because you're going to have to like figure out how to make that money again. And it's not something that you want to do. You want to get into some good fun. It's very easy. I would recommend some amount of skill training into some frigates and destroyers because they're going to be useful in the right situations. They're going to be incredibly cheap if you want to do like some Tristan faction warfare. That's super amazing. There are a lot of good options for those there. And then for a lot of your PvE activities, cruisers are going to be really good. Battle cruisers are going to be really good. And then once you can kind of like, after a while, you can maybe start to think about battleships and marauders specifically. Marauders are, I won't lie to you, marauders are fucking ludicrous in the game. They're incredibly powerful and good. But if you don't have the base understanding and the baseline, I really don't recommend it. You can have a lot more fun, make a lot more iskies, a lot more cheaply when you lose things with cruisers, destroyers, battle cruisers, frigates. They're all good in their right. They're all good in their specific situation. Depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. And with that, I will conclude. Thank you so much for coming to the class. It's been a great time. Hopefully you'll learn a thing or two. I will see you guys. I stream Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, starting around 2300 Eve time, going for about 4 to 5 hours each day. And I hope to see you there now on Twitch and YouTube. So see you later.